Hello. So today, as Alex is working on the Miata engine, getting some bolts done and everything, I am going to work on starting the long arm kit on the Jeep. So the first thing we're going to do is install this crossmember. The kit is a radius arm based lift. So basically from the crossmember back, which is about here-ish, the arms will attach to the body and then go to the axle forward. Now the thing about a radius arm is that it rotates in this fashion, so the axle will actually move back as it moves down, which is okay. I'll talk about that later, but for now what we have to do first is remove this trans cross member here. Well, we have to support the transmission and the transfer case, remove this cross member, and then bolt the other one on. We will have to remove those studs, which is not a problem, it's pretty easy, and then put the new one on. And it's kind of heavy, but that'll be all right. We'll use the jack and stuff. So the first thing to take the cross member off is to take this mount out. So there are 4 bolts, I think. Yeah. Whoa. Once you get the wrench that actually fits onto the bolt, there we go. Now these are 1/2-inch bolt heads. So this is just part of the collection that Jeep uses that is Imperial. There you go. These probably get very dirty, so make sure you get the socket nicely and squarely on there. Unlike what I'm doing, honestly, I have half a mind to go just get the impact, but you're going to want to save this hardware because you'll have to reuse this. And at this point, I am just loosening everything up before I take them all off. Not that it's going to fall, it's just good practice. Okay, so there's one. It's kind of gross. Put it over there. Two. Now after this, I'll be able to jack up the transmission and transfer case and basically put a stand under them such that I can get the crossmember out without risk of them falling. Pretty ingenious, if you have to ask me. So now all 4 bolts are out, so this should be able to move up and down freely. Alright, so I have secured the trans crossmember with a jack stand. Well, that's a lie. I've secured the transfer case and the transmission with a jack stand right underneath the output of the transfer case. So now I can take the 2 bolts and 2 nuts that hold the crossmember on off. Then we can move on. Now, for these bolts and nuts, Jeep decided to not stay with American sizing, and they actually used a 15mm socket. I don't understand why they always do this and why they change, but that's what they did, so here we are. Oh my, that is tight. Get some more leverage on that. And what you want to do is not round it, so we're gonna go get an impact. awesome. Now, the new cross member is a heavy boy, so I'm going to hold that up with the jack. That is this piece right over here. Actually, I first have to take those studs out, so I'm going to use the double nut trick to get those out. The double nut trick is one of my favorites. What you do is you put 2 nuts on to the stud, opposing each other, and tighten them against each other. Then, with your wrench on the top one, you unscrew the nut so it tightens against the bottom nut. And that will pull the stud right out. It's pretty cool, actually. Hello, welcome back. So last night I got stuck trying to pull the stud out as I was showing you, but I went out and I bought this stud puller and it works amazingly. It's cool because as you tighten the stud puller onto the stud, it gets tighter, and then yeah, it's thrilling, really. Oh dear. And just like that, the stud pulls right out. So this thing is great because there are 3 jaws in here that, as you spin this center section, tighten down onto the stud. So as you try to remove the stud, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and won't let the stud go until it removes itself. It's fantastic. So at this point, it's time to install the new trans cross member. They tell us, Rough Country tells us to use just 2 bolts to hold it on for now, and then I will have to get a drill bit to put holes into the side of the frame for the reinforcement bits. So, let's go do that now. Wrong hole. This is more correct. So this kit is for long arms, and the trans cross member now will hold the new control arms all the way from back here. So instead of having the control arms mount up here in the front, which you probably can't see out of frame, they will now mount to here. So that is why we have to change this cross member. The benefit to the long arms is that there is better ride comfort and debatably more articulation. So I'm really excited for that comfort. Okay, so Now the next step is to install these stiffener plates. These go around the mount over here and then tie into the side of the frame rail to make the entire side, well, one, stiffer, obviously, but two, make this entire joint more rigid. So I'll need to drill holes in this, in the frame, but in order to get the location, we have to put the plate on so we know exactly where to drill. And I need to go out and get some drill bits. Today is a work day of frequent breaks. So the good news is I got the cross member onto the Jeep, so that's good, and the transmission is mounted. So it can actually move, which is cool. I went out and I got the drill bits that I needed to do to drill the holes for the cross member, and now I'm going to pull the Jeep over here into the shade to start working on the front suspension bits. Thomas is here and he's going to replace the gas tank in his E34. Gas tank, new one's over there, the one obviously is inside the car. But basically his leaks. It's a metal gas tank and it rusted and it's now leaking. And Alex is inside working on the Miata, and he is grinding parts of the mount system stuff so he can install the motor mounts.
Oh, it's gotta be a lot. A lot. Yeah, this is trashed already.
Aluminum things.
Yeah.
So this block has a motor mount that sits somewhere on here on the TSX, and this adapter plate will attach to these bosses and enable Alex to put the mount onto these three holes. But this little boss here that holds the, it really does nothing, it's kind of a waste of time, needs to be ground off so that he can put the mount into, or the mount bracket onto the engine. That is Thomas.
I love making people feel uncomfortable.
That's what he does best.
So I'm admittedly doing this lift a little bit out of order. So I already did the transmission cross member underneath. And now I'm going to start with the actual directions. So that is going to be to remove the upper shock stuff so I can get all of the hardware off the front axle. So there's one and there's the other. So I'm just going to start loosening this joint. Oddly enough, all this hardware so far is coming off easily. It's very scary. That means that something else will be a large pain. But for now, we have the two dishes and we have the rubber bit. The rubber bit should just slide up. Yep, just like that. So, one spring isolator is off. And now I'll do the other side. Hooray. Okay, so I have also taken the wheel off. So now we need to take the lower parts of the shock bolts out, which are down here. And those are two 15mm bolts. That's what they are. They're bolts. I lied. They are 14mm bolts. I lied. They are 13mm bolts. Okay. If we are lucky, everything will come out nicely. So far, that appears to be the case. That one's going to be a pain to get to. Well, unfortunately, it won't fit on this side either, so here we are. This is terribly unfortunate, but we shall make it work. There we go. It sounds like Thomas got the rear bumper off.
I did.
Sources tell me he did.
Don't worry, it was already broken.
Now, of course, whatever I do on this side will be mirrored for the other side. Well, maybe not mirrored, but you'll just do it again. So, well, this feels not so nice. Ah! As it turns out, I am rotating the bolt underneath, so I would be willing to bet that it is also a 13. Excellent. Okay, it's a lot nicer. So now I can just use the 13. I don't know if that nut is supposed to be welded, but if it is, better for me that it's not. Okay, so shock bolt 1. Guy as well. Let's see if this one is doing the same thing. Yes, it is. It's actually hugely convenient. So once the shock comes out, I should be able to get enough droop to pull the spring out, I assume. I don't know, we'll just follow the instructions. Kind of lame, but whatever. So I'm gonna go do this to the other side as well and hold my hardware together. Okay, so that has been done. The shock bolts are out, so both shocks are loose. And now I need to remove the sway bar. Unfortunately, I don't have the right T55 Torx bit for this, so for the bottom part, so I'm only going to take off the top. Now, I think that this is not going to end well, personally, but we will see. There we go. Broke the nut loose. So now we should be able to get it with a 15 mil deep. Now, my sway bar mount, the end link is actually bent. So I hope yours does not get to the same condition. So it snapped. Oh dear. That's fine. Yeah, so on this link, it was bent right here, right where the it kind of necks down to accept the threads, and it just snapped in that spot. So naturally, like any good tutorial, you do the same procedure on the other side. So I'm gonna go do that now. So now that the sway bars are done, or removed in some fashion, we have to take off this main linkage that holds the axle on. So we need the lateral, meaning left-right, locating member. So go support that. And we're going to take off this track bar mount. Now the track bar holds the axle in the left-right direction. It bolts on right here with a 15 mil bolt. I'm curious to see if it's wallowed out or anything, because apparently that's a common place for it to have an issue and to cause death wobble. And we can use the impact on this. Hooray. Okay. Those threads look fine. Kind of. Oh yeah, that is wallowed out a little bit. That would benefit from having an additional washer welded on top. So I might tack one on later. Yeah, I bet that would cause a shimmy. Anyway, track bar is out. Track bar is out. So one thing they suggest is to remove the caliper from the axle so that when you lower the axle, you'll have more droop ability so you don't pinch the brake line. So I've gone ahead and done that. And now I'm going to do the other side. All right, so now the next step is to remove the coil spring retainer. That way when we let the axle down, we can remove the spring. So I will go ahead and do that right now. This is in a reasonably uncomfortable position. That's all right though. Ignore that, that's just a brake pad. Fear not, this would be a lot nicer if I had a longer socket and or a longer extension. So I shall use longer extension. There we go. Now we're going to want to save this as well for when we put the new coils back on. We will need the same retainer. Oh, it's a long boy. Okay, so, yep, there we almost. There we go. And the spring retainer is out. Surprised it's not located, but I guess it doesn't have to be. And once we lower the axle, this is, well, is now a crumbling bump stop. But once we lower the axle, this will unseat from the top and we'll be able to just walk it right out.